Hello, everybody. I'm Raina from Garden District Bookshop, and thank you for joining me for Virtual Happy Hour again this evening. Tonight, I'm talking to Alex Jennings, which is super exciting because I Facebook stalked him for many months and finally got him on Virtual Happy Hour, which I'm super excited about. His first novel doesn't come out until 2022, which we're going to talk about that writing process. He's a local author, and I'm just going to click the button and invite him on the screen. Hi, Alex.
Hi.
How are you this evening?
Great. How are you?
Pretty good. How's the rain over there?
I don't know exactly. I've been working all day, and honestly, the first thunder kind of caught me by surprise. So I guess I was doing a good job of staying on task. But I hear it. It's coming down pretty hard, but I don't know if there's any flooding or anything like that.
Yeah. So you somehow avoided all of the masses of text messages, and I even got a National Weather Service alert that comes through everything. And I'm it's when I got them, it was barely even raining. Now it's pouring here.
Right. I wasn't really checking my phone all day.
You're doing a very good job staying on task. It was excellent work, it sounds like. And I wanted to say to everybody who's watching, if you have any comments or questions, put them in the comments and we will read them. We'll answer your questions here in real time. And if you don't, just say hi. Let us know where you're watching from, because that's always fun to see where everybody's viewing from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So I was reading your bio, and you were a co-founder of the Dogfish Reading Series. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. And that was, for everybody who doesn't know, a reading series. Did you guys? It was once a month. Was that right?
It was once a month. It was usually the third Thursday of the month, and we did it for five and a half years.
Yeah, and it's super popular, reading series. And I know, when I heard, and I know a lot of other people, bookish people in town heard that it wasn't going to happen anymore, there was this collective all sigh, and it was, you could feel it. It was weird to have created something that had that much I don't know if influence is the right word, but this love of that series, and then it went away and you could just sort of feel it. I'm sure there were many reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly the pandemic, honestly. And it became clear pretty quickly that Dogfish without that space is not Dogfish. So, we just decided to let it go.
Yeah.
But it was not an easy decision at all.
No, I can imagine. Well, maybe in the future, as things get all the way back to normal, there could be a Dogfish reunion, because that would be fun.
I mean, I'm sure there will be something like that at some point. Can't say when, but
no, it's too early. So I don't know much about you except from your Instagram. And let me tell you what I know. You have an adorable dog, and you have access to an awesome pool.
Yes. My dog's name is Karate Valentino. We got him about a year ago, my roommate and I, and he is a Boxer Shar-Pei mix, and he's a huge sweetheart, and I love him very much. He was one of the best things that happened to me during the pandemic. Someone asked who influenced my desire for writing.
Yes.
So there have been a bunch of influences. I would say first would be my grandmother, Elizabeth Jennings. She was an educator for many years, and she, instituted a rule in my family that no one should speak to me in baby talk. Everyone should speak to me in full sentences and answer my questions cogently. And she also used to tell bedtime stories that the sleepier she got, the crazier they got. They would drift off into the surreal. and I loved those stories. Now, my dad is the reason I got into fantasy, because when we were little, he would read the Lord of the Rings trilogy to my little brother and me, and we had a great time with that. Like I'll always have a special place in my heart for those books, and so when I started working on Ballad, I had a lot of that in mind, and so it's very focused on my family. It's very focused on the music and culture of New Orleans, and it's focused on those bonds and that love. Oh, I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Octavia Butler. Um, when my parents and I were living overseas in Paramaribo, Suriname, um, when I was 12, I think there was only one English language library in town. That was the community liaison office library at the American Embassy where my dad worked, and so it was full of like old Asimov's issues and the magazine of fantasy and science fiction and a lot of SF paperbacks. And so that was where I first discovered Octavia Butler's work. And years later, when I was at the Evergreen State College, I actually had the chance to meet her, and she was very gracious. And her ride was late that afternoon, so she posted up at a table with me and a bunch of other folks who worked at the writing center there at Evergreen, and she just talked to us for about 2.5 hours. And over the course of that conversation, she told me to apply to the Clarion West Writers Workshop, which is this long-running SF workshop out of Seattle. And she told me that if I applied, I would get in, and I did, and she was right. So that was where things really began. And then I started selling SF stories in 2005, I think it was.
That's awesome. That is such a great story. Literally, Octavia Butler told you to apply, and
Yeah,
there you go.
I think the best thing about it was that the kind of influence she had on me wasn't just something that related to me. Like many people have these sorts of stories about her. In fact, there was an anthology released a few years back called Luminescent Threads, Connections to Octavia Butler, where people would write essays and letters about their experience with her and her work. And it's really good. It's from 12th Planet Press. Um,
I'm
so
gonna see if I can find it here, if it's available for us to order. Ooh, it totally is. I'm gonna put a link to it in the comments.
it's some good stuff. Like being a part of that anthology was a really great experience too.
Okay, so it is totally still available. And
Excellent.
there's the link. Okay. That's I love to when you get to meet an author that you've read and all the way from like enjoyed to loved, and it just happens upon you. You get to meet this person and they turn out to be like actually as awesome as you're hoping they are. That's always a good feeling.
Yeah, a lot of the folks that I've had the fortune to meet over the years have been great in that way, and Octavia was definitely one of the greatest. Like Clarion West also was a major influence because, like to that point, Octavia was the only like established SF author that I had met. But the way that program works is you go for 6 weeks and you stay in a sorority house in the U District of Seattle, and there's a different instructor every week, and you do workshops on the Iowa model and critique everybody's stuff, and like there are also lectures. So I went in 2003 So my year, it was Nancy Kress, who was another of my heroes. Um, Kathleen Ann Goonan, who unfortunately passed recently. Elizabeth Hand, um, China Mieville, Patrick Nielsen Hayden, and Samuel R. Delaney, who is another huge influence. That guy's just
Yeah.
amazing.
That is an amazing lineup of people to just be able to get to work with for that time and
It
learn
really,
from.
it was also like back then they were setting up the oral histories for the science fiction museum in Seattle, and
Mhm.
so like not only did we have all those instructors, but we would have people come in to record their interviews. So Octavia was there for that as well, and then Ursula Le Guin came to do her interviews,
Wow.
and like, oh man, I was just starstruck.
I was just sold one of her books today, and there was she's probably like 15, and she was looking for a book, and I'm like, try this, Left Hand of Darkness. You know, we had it on the shelf, and I sold it to her, and I'm trying to explain like. Ursula Le Guin is an author that I never had to read in school for reasons, and I knew that she was amazing, but like I just didn't get to it until just a few years ago. And I'm like, okay, now's the time. I'm reading it, you know. And then I'm like, well, this is what everyone's talking about. I mean, this is amazing. Not only is the story, it's just the writing, and I'm like so engrossed in everything that is happening with every one of her books that I've read so far, and. I just there's no other way to explain it. You just need to do it. Just do, if you haven't read any of her stuff yet, do it, and then you'll know what everyone's talking about.
Absolutely. She's one of the very greatest, like just fantastic. Oh, oddly enough, like so I recently got a new phone, so I got a free year of Apple TV Plus. I'd never even considered getting it or watching anything on it.
Yeah.
But I started watching this show, Mythic Quest, and there's like one of the major characters is an aged science fiction author, and there's this flashback episode in the second season that I recently saw where Ursula has an appearance. Ursula and Bradbury have cameos, and then Isaac Asimov is a major character in the episode. So yeah. Anyway, I like that show.
That is awesome. Yeah, I don't have that either. There was another show I can't remember. People have talked about a bunch. It's about a soccer coach, and it's on Apple TV Plus.
Yeah, Ted Lasso. I haven't checked that one out yet.
Yeah, but see, that was when like 3 or 4 people have told me, "Oh, it's so good, it's so good," and I'm like, there's got to be more reasons to pay the monthly fee. I can't just do it for one show. But now there's 2. So Mythic Quest and Ted Lasso. So
there's also that Stephen King adaptation, Lisey's Story. I'm not totally sure how I feel about it yet, but I do know it's extremely well made. And I'm watching it.
That's good. Yeah.
I haven't done it yet.
All right. Wow. Okay. So what phone service do you have that you get Apple Plus with?
I have Sprint.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I just lost my phone while I was at a writing residency in Las Vegas, and so I had to get it replaced. And oddly enough, like they emailed me to say, "Oh, you have access to this." So.
Okay, thanks. That's why I think I have T-Mobile, and they were like, there's 2 packages, and like the bigger package you get Netflix with, but I didn't do it because I didn't need the other features that were on it. But if I had like one or another phone line, if I needed another phone line, it would have made so much sense. And I'm already paying for Netflix, so I might as well get it free. But no, the Apple Plus, I'll have to check that out more.
Yeah, I mean, at least the production values are very high. I haven't watched all the shows or anything yet.
I think they're just like building up their shows, because I know like they keep putting out more shows. They keep coming up and they're producing their own stuff. So I think they're just lying in wait and like building up this catalog. And then at some point they're going to do this major push and just everyone's going to be like, oh, look at all this stuff.
Yeah, they're about to start airing a long adaptation of Asimov's Foundation novels. I'm curious about that.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this is kind of fascinating. They're grabbing this stuff that no one else has done yet, and then if they do it well, and of course that's an established audience. I mean, Asimov is an established audience. Stephen King is an established audience. So like they just have to get that information to the right people. Okay, then they're doing it right here. It's happening right now, organically. We're doing it. So
absolutely.
Okay. So tell me a little more about the Ballad of Perilous Graves, because that's not coming out until 2022.
That's right. May of 22.
Okay, May. I wasn't sure of like the month yet. I just knew 22. So you're about a year away from that.
Yep.
First, tell me a little bit about the book. Do what you're
Okay, so the book is a sort of blaxploitation Pippi Longstocking story set in a sort of hallucinatory version of New Orleans where music is a kind of magic. And 9 songs have escaped from Professor Longhair's piano. And my Pippi character and her friends have to find the songs and return them to their home before the city loses its mojo and ceases to exist. I've been working on it for quite a while. My life has changed a lot in the doing of that. But, you know, I'm a transplant to New Orleans, but I love the city very much. I've lived here since the summer of 2006. And one of the things that really struck me like early on in my life here is I would see these news stories about children who were forced to return to the city without their parents and take care of themselves as they went to school. So in my mind, that automatically connected to the parentless orphan Pippi Longstocking, and I decided to try and reimagine her and her adventures if she was, you know, a little black girl living in Central City, New Orleans. And the rest came from there. I
am in love with this book already. I need you to know that.
Oh, thank you.
First of all, New Orleans music, Pippi Longstockings, yes. And yes, this idea of like them being sent here to kind of start figuring it out while parents kept working wherever they had been displaced to. And I love this idea because Pippi Longstocking's dad sent her, but like he checked in on her. He loved her. He just like that was their thing. So that idea where like they, you know, they're not sent away like go, like we don't want you around anymore. They're like, this is the steps we have to get back home one day. And like I never felt like that was, I read those stories and I felt bad that situation had to occur, but I saw the steps. It wasn't neglect. It was love, and we're all a family and stepping together. And I think those ideas and pulling that Pippi Longstocking, I'm super into that. And then you get the music and you're chasing down the songs, and I'm super, because music and New Orleans, I mean.
Yeah. It kind of deals with music and art here in town and sort of the influence that it has on world culture and the world imagination and how it connects with the creative unconscious. It's I know it sounds kind of like a kid's book, but it's not.
I was gonna ask you. It was like I thought that it was like an adult novel, but it in ways you're describing it sounds YA, but
there are a lot of adult characters and perspectives, and even early on when everybody was telling me that it should be aimed at children, like it's always been important to me in my own reading and in my writing that even when you're dealing with fantastical or whimsical tropes and elements, that they should have real weight. And that I personally don't understand how you write fantasy, either contemporary or otherwise, without a major sense of danger. Like even in the Peter Pan stories, like Neverland was a wild and dangerous place, and bad things could happen.
Mhm.
So that was really important to me working on this book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it what they tell us as booksellers. How does something what makes something YA versus an adult or whatever is the intended audience.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're writing intending for adults to read it, then you're thinking of it in a little bit of a different way, I think, as well. And so that's really what it comes down to. Your protagonist can be whatever age, but who are you intending to read it
Right.
is really the part that decides what shelf it goes on.
That's the idea.
But that line's becoming blurred more and more, I think, in a lot of ways. More adults are reading YA, more teenagers, it's easier to take that, like, if they've read YA, it was like, okay, what have you read? Okay, well, you can definitely read these,
Mm-hmm.
like adult shelf. And I have this, like, I have two sides to this, because I have a 14-year-old little boy. So as a bookseller, I love that line is becoming more and more blurred. As a parent, I'm pretty lax about whatever. If he's enjoying reading it, let him read it. But it's like, okay, there aren't these just safe sections in a bookstore, but I kind of don't mind.
Yeah.
Again, back to the bookseller point of view, I'm like, well, let's push that envelope a little bit.
I feel very similarly. Growing up, I read a lot of books that I really had no business reading, and like while I did read a pretty good amount of YA, like Madeline L'Engle and things like that, I started reading Stephen King when I was 10. So I was reading some pretty advanced stuff that, while my parents were pretty restrictive of like my television and movie viewing, they didn't have the same kind of restrictions on my reading. So I just went everywhere and read everything.
Books fly under the radar. They do. Parents be like, oh, you're reading? Good. I walk away,
Right.
which is great. And um, that is kind of the way it should be. I don't know. That's me. Oh, all right. So we have another question. What is your writing routine?
Thank you for that question, Linda Spencer. What is my writing routine? You could say that I don't really have one. Like, I know a lot of people benefit from strictly trying to monitor their word count and making sure that they're writing for a set amount of time every day. I'm a little bit looser. I do try to write for an average of 1 hour every day of the week, but that for me means that I'll write 3 hours on this day, 2 hours on this other day, and maybe some days I'm not really writing at all. And then I do also like to draw a hard dividing line between writing and editing. So I definitely don't like to do them at the same time. I'm not one of these edit as you go kind of people. Um, so it also depends on what I'm working on. Like if I'm working on a novel, I will spend more focused periods of time on that for like a week or two. But if I'm working on short stories, I'll kind of pick them up um, as my schedule becomes clear. And I tend to write poetry just mainly as the spirit moves me, but at the same time, I make sure that the spirit moves me pretty frequently. Like if I go a week or two without writing a poem, I really try to get back in the saddle and see if there's anything I can connect with, idea wise or emotionally. But yeah, I tend to rise pretty late. My day job is as an instructor at Delgado Community College, adult education, and their e-learn program. So, I'll get up any time between like 9 and 10:30 in the morning, and I'll work late into the night because that's just what suits me best. Um, what else? I'm trying to figure out. I think that covers just about everything. I mean, I like the feeling of writing longhand, and so for a while I would write in the pool. I would take a notebook out there and just write longhand in my notebook. But because of the way like my life and career have been changing, I don't really have much time to do that anymore. So nowadays the pool is more for reading time than for writing. Um, it's a shame, but that's just the way it goes.
Well, is there anything good you're reading right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of really good things I'm reading right now. I just finished the Ballad of the Unnamed, oh, not the ballad, the book Unnamed Midwife by Meg Elison, who's actually going to be coming to town soonish. But it's a
Ooh.
fantastic book. It's a near future post apocalyptic novel where most of the world population has been wiped out and more women than men have died out. And so, womanhood becomes way more dangerous than it had been. And so the main character, who is suffering from amnesia and can't remember her name, decides to present as male and try to offer health care and birth control to women that she encounters in the wasteland. And it's just a fantastic read. Like it really cracks. It's well paced. It's brimming with personality. It was Elison's first book. I think she's up to. I think she has 5 out now, but that was
the first in
trilogy.
the series. Yeah. That one was the first in a trilogy, I guess. So
Yeah, I need to pick the other 2.
that sounds good.
I've also been reading. On a whim, I picked up this book of like Black Panther short stories that Marvel put out.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I didn't really know what to expect, but I did know that like some of my friends had stories in there, and it's called Black Panther Tales of Wakanda, I believe, and it's fascinating. Like I was a comic fan from way back, and so I'm into superheroes in that way, and like I write about them sometimes, even though like I'm not writing with like established Marvel or DC characters.
Right.
But that's a very good book.
Okay, I've got that too. All right, link. Oh, I misspelled it, but you know what it is.
Yeah.
Trying to type fast. I misspelled it. But that's kind of so. Is it a comic? It's not a comic. It's
it's prose. I have a really soft spot for superhero prose stories. I feel like I enjoy comics a lot. Like prose lends itself well to superhero stories because just like with comics, you don't have any of the budgetary constraints that you'd have with live action, and it kind of engages your imagination a little bit more directly. And so, like, I used to read superhero short stories as a kid. Like, I remember there was this book of Spider-Man's short stories called The Ultimate Spider-Man, and there was a story in particular called The Stalking of Jane Doe, of John Doe, sorry.
Yeah.
So what really got me about it was it takes this, very colorful, like Marvel comic character, and then looks at him through a really adult lens that's as realistic as possible. And that just that really captured something in me as a kid. And so I like to kind of do the same thing. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
main thing I'm looking at right now.
So that is, I'm not a huge comic, like I've read enough to know what you're talking about, but I don't know the big, the storylines and dig deep into the backstories of characters and things like that. But I've always loved companion books to like TV series, especially like I've read all of the ones that go with the X-Files. I loved the X-Files in a very unhealthy way when it was on originally. But I still love the X-Files. And I've been like, I may have been a little too obsessed with it at the time. But I love that, not the ones that retell an episode you've already, watched, but it's a new episode, it's a new storylines. It builds into that, the mythology of the TV show. And I read all the Lost books that came out around the same time, when Lost was out, and they did the same thing. Man, that show is so good at building all of the different. I don't know. Did you watch Lost when it was on, or have you watched Lost at all?
Yeah, I watched it all the way through.
Okay, yeah. So when it was on, I really loved that show as well. And they built the real website, and they had all these books. And if you went to all of the places and you read all of it, you were getting more of it because it wasn't overlapping. It was telling more of the stories, building more of that world. And I really feel bad. Like there's certain things. I mean, they did such a good job with it. And I don't know if they were absolutely the first ones to do it, but they were definitely close to the first people to, or the first, company or show to really build the like websites and books and have it all like fit together. I feel bad for anybody who's just watching Lost now, because if you get into it, none of that, like that stuff doesn't exist. You can't live the extras now.
Right. Yeah, I was kind of lukewarm when it came to engaging with the material apart from the show. But at the same time, I really enjoyed that it was out there and that other people were like combing through it obsessively. Like the closest I would get was like freeze framing an episode of a show to like see what kind of frame that they had inserted in the story. I love that stuff.
Yeah. I also wish, like having loved the X-Files like in the 90s, and then what Lost did with all of the extra stuff, wishing that had existed when the X-Files, because I just know they would have done similar things.
Oh, absolutely.
I was a member of the fan club, like back when fan clubs, you wrote letters and then they sent you a package in a manila envelope, and it had like a cassette tape, and you put the cassette tape in, and it was like the lone gunman talking to you, because you got this super secret tape because you're a member of the fan club. Okay. So, but all of that stuff was similar, where if you had all these extras, it felt like you knew more of what was going on behind the scenes, because it would be like this extra information for episodes that were coming up. And that, I just know they would have capitalized on that so well. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody is doing it to that degree anymore. I know The Walking Dead was doing a little bit of that at least, and like there were some like companion web series and stuff, but I'm not sure anybody is doing it to the degree that they did with Lost. Like that was like the OG effort as far as
right, with the TV show. Yeah, for sure. So my nerd, like, I guess companion prose goes in a little bit of a different direction, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I used to read a lot of those tie-ins and stuff too, like especially like the bigger Star Trek novels and like some of the Star Wars stuff, and then some of the comics function that way as well. Like a lot of my friends are writing Star Wars comics these days.
Yeah. Star Wars comics are still, because Star Wars has got new stuff coming out, so that's where it is right now. I'm more of a Star Trek person, but so I don't end up reading all of them. But yes, I know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I love Star Trek too. I'm a huge fan of Star Trek Discovery. I love it, and like not just that one either. Like I watch all of the shows right now. I'm watching Picard. I'm also watching Lower Decks, the animated one. Yeah, OG Star Trek cat.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to season 2 of Picard. When does season 2 of Picard?
I don't know. I like sometimes I'll steer away from stuff like that because it just makes me crazy and anxious. So the one thing I've seen about season 2 of Picard is I saw a promotional still of John Delancey in character for Q, and
Mm-hmm.
like I looked at it for a couple seconds and I was like, oh, I can't, and I just left it alone.
There's an official trailer for season 2.
Is it?
It's a yes. It's on. It's on YouTube, but it's Paramount's like YouTube channel. So it's like a real. It's real. I always make sure. Like I have fallen for those fake trailers way too many times.
Okay, look, I'm all for creativity. I'm all for people having fun with the things that interest them. But like, why are you labeling this as a real trailer for
Right?
this season I'm waiting for when it is not at all? You know how many fan trailers for the new Spider-Man movie I've watched only to be bitterly disappointed in the end?
Mm-hmm. And it is. It's like some of them. I'm like halfway through, and I'm going, something's not right. Like I don't know about this. Is this right? Like that scene looks a little familiar or something. And but
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh well, it's just it's been a year. I don't really remember, or it's they're sort of using this to recap. And yeah, and you get almost all the way to the end or the very end, and you're like, damn it, I was suckered in again. Like, so okay, and YouTube does like I don't know a good bad job of being on top of like copyright infringement and different things like that, and you can but you can make your own trailer and say it's a real trailer, and evidently that's fine. I don't know, there should
Yeah,
be some like check mark or symbol or something that
right. I mean, I don't want the copyright holders to a lot of these things to get super
yeah.
litigious about these things, but like some slightly better labeling would be helpful, I think.
Yes, completely agree. I completely agree with you, because I've also had problems like my husband actually does a monster movie, an animated like monster movie show.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of times, so his like characters is like Joe Bob Briggs or Elvira or something, but his characters are animated. But he can't put the episodes on YouTube, even though the movies are public domain, because there'll be some little thing will trigger it, and it's just not worth the back and forth with YouTube to try and prove that it's public domain and all of this like whatever. He's just like, forget it. I'm not even gonna put it on there anymore.
That's really too bad.
So, oh my gosh. So my power went out earlier, and my alarm system, I guess you can't hear that, but it's beeping.
Yeah, I can hear it a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, it's like
intrusive or anything.
It's beeping. Yeah, it's much louder to me than I guess it is to you guys, which is great. But yeah, it's still doing it. So I want to show you. Okay, first of all, I'm gonna plug Maurice's book again because it's here, and you should all pre-order it, and it comes out in August. And yes, and that's short stories as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I'm gonna be honest. When I heard that his next book was short stories, I was like, "Oh, I really wanted another novel," but I was wrong.
I mean, I do want another novel, but I love short stories. They're so much fun.
Oh my God, they're so good. Have you been able to read this yet?
No, not yet. Not yet. I need to get a hold of an arc and write about it or something.
Right, exactly. If I had an extra one, I would give it to you, but I can't give you this one because I love it.
All right, another one from Linda. Okay, so yes, I am working on new stuff, mostly poetry and short stories. We're still finalizing the final manuscript for the book, but I've had a lot of time to do short fiction as well. So I had a story in the most recent issue of Current Affairs magazine. They don't usually publish fiction, but they asked me to submit for their noir issue. And so I wrote a Rougarou story set right here in Central City. and I believe it's online now as well. That was great fun. Um, I also have a story coming out on this science fiction podcast called Escape Pod, and that'll be out in September, I believe. But I'm not sure the exact date on that. Uh, I have I have poetry coming out in Native Skin magazine. That should be around August, I think. And I have a couple things that I am not at liberty to discuss quite yet. But yeah, I've always got at least a couple short stories on the boil. It's a lot of fun.
All right. The current affairs story is up on the internet, and now you can all read it. There we go. I'm going to leave that tab open so that I can read it after we finish with virtual happy hour, because that would be awesome. Okay, and that is fascinating, the Root story set in Central City, because, okay, was it at all inspired by the fact that sometimes people see coyotes, like, in town? What is the deal with that?
Not the coyotes, really. It honestly, to be 100%, it's actually based on two things. One is the mass arrests of the Hankton gang in, I think it was 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, I was walking karate one night down Josephine Street towards Simon Bolivar, and all of a sudden, this Rottweiler jumps out of the window of a house to like get in my dog's face.
Oh,
and like, thankfully, karate is not a fighter, even though karate is his name, and he usually wins any animal over to being his friend. And so the whole thing was diffused, but that was pretty scary.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, you just assume if the dog's in its own home, you're cool. It's gonna be fine. Not so much.
I heard the dog barking as we approached, but I was not, like, I've never seen a dog jump through a window before.
Right? That's, yeah. Well, good job you and karate, because yeah, I would be freaking out, and that would probably just freak my dog out. So
yeah.
Yeah, that is that. Have you ever, like, you know the coyote stories I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah, I have. Like, I have heard a couple of those. It seems kind of strange to me that there are coyotes in this part of the country, but it makes sense. We're not that far from Texas.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there's, like, it's for a coyote to be in this area in general isn't too crazy, but then my question is, where are they going all the other time you don't see them? Like, a couple of months will go by and you'll hear a couple of coyote sightings. Okay. And then a couple more months go by. Well, where did they go?
Well, there's a lot of city park that doesn't get used. And like that, if I was a coyote, that would be a great place to hide.
Mm-hmm. Isn't there like a forest around Delgado that is not, like, what is this? Do you know about this? Because I've sort of heard about this, like this hidden forest, but I've never tried to track it down.
Well, I kind of feel like Forest might be overselling it, but there is a lot of greenery down there. And like, for instance, the old golf course in City Park, like, nobody's doing anything with that. I think I went out there one time to like shoot a comedy sketch with some friends several years ago. But yeah, nothing's been done with it. They're not developing it or anything. It's certainly not being used as golf courses. It's just full of like all this stubby, like, overgrown grass. But I don't know. Like, City Park is so huge that maybe there is like a densely forested area that, like, I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head.
I'm gonna look this up. But like, I read an article at some point, and if I find it, I'm not gonna be able to find it. It's not popping up in the first Google search of what the keywords I use. But if I find it, I'll send it to you and I'll post it here in the comments when I find it later. But it was about this. It's like separate from City Park somehow, and it's this just overgrown foresty area, but it's not. There's no real entrance to it, I guess. And I'm gonna have to find this article. I'm not making this up, but I don't remember all the details enough to be like, oh, you just go over here. But somewhere, yeah, and they were just saying this. It's like I want to say it's like Atlas Obscura or something. It was like in some like little known fact, thing. So I don't know. I'm gonna look that up.
There might be a mention of it in Phantom City. I know that was This is something. Oh no! I don't want to make a mess. But this is something that Maurice was involved in a few years back. It's this really beautiful volume, and I think I actually got my copy from Garden District Bookshop. But it's called Unfathomable City, not Phantom City, and it's edited by Rebecca Solnit and
Rebecca Snedeker.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, that might be a good place to look for such things.
That is a really good book too. It's a great one for people who want like a not traditional history of the city, or look at what people ask a lot about, like either a history of the city or a book about New Orleans, but nonfiction, so they're learning something, but they're not really serious like nonfiction readers. And that's a good one because it breaks it up and it has all these maps that are made specifically for the book, and it tells the story of the city in a very different way. It's not just a linear, like here's some history, and but you end up at the end with so much information about the city.
Right.
That's a great one. All right. Yeah, I have no idea. Okay, I want to show you another one that I'm reading. And have you heard of Hollow Kingdom?
I don't think I have.
Okay. So this one has been out for a little while. The next one comes out at the end of July, I think. So this is the second one in the series. Okay, here's the setup. Humans have turned into kind of zombies, for lack of a better term. They have their own rules, but essentially. And you are following a pet crow that wanders around the city, and he's trying to save his human. He doesn't know what's happened, but he was raised by this guy who is just like a little trashy. So his vocabulary is absolutely hilarious. And the way he learned about humans is that he watched a lot of reality TV and some nature documentaries. So you've got the crow, and he's wandering around Seattle. It's set in Seattle, and trying to figure out what's going on with the humans. And it's absolutely hilarious. And if you know Seattle, like you know where he's going all over the city. And yeah, it's absolutely hilarious. And so just, I could write down, like, I feel like every like fifth page I could write down, there's like this hilarious, witty, like one-liner that I'm writing down just so that I have like this legal pad full of these like hilarious one-liners. And I just started Feral Creatures. So, and it's reading very similarly. So I'm very excited about
I'll have to check that out. Did you ever read that John Crowley novel, Dar Oakley in the Ruins of Ymir?
No.
It's so good. What you were saying made me think of that, because like it's kind of seriously literary and fantastic at the same time. But the POV, like the main character, is a crow who seems to be immortal, and he's basically telling the story of his life as much as he can understand it from the perspective of a crow, and it's great.
All right, I'm definitely okay. Dar Oakley.
Yeah, DAR, second word OAKLEY.
Got it. I'm definitely gonna check that out because it's just such a different. It's a different premise. A different.
Absolutely.
I'm in. I'm also. Do you listen to any audiobooks?
I do. I recently listened to and I swear that it's not. I'm not trying to plug this just because I'm in it, but New Suns, speculative fiction by people of color. It's an anthology edited by Nisi Shawl that came out a couple years ago, and the audiobook is really fantastic. I'm also
Okay, tell me the title of that one again.
New Suns.
New Suns, yes.
Yeah, it's a really solid audio production. One of my favorite audiobooks of all time is the unabridged full cast version of Max Brooks's World War Z.
Yes.
Yeah, so good, so good. And the cast is just insane. It's like Alan Alda's in it, and I think Brad Pitt was in it as well. Just really good stuff. Yeah, I like audiobooks quite a lot. I especially like to listen to them when I'm out walking karate. Uh, I just really like having somebody read to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. My mom read to us like bigger books, like from the picture books, and to middle grade and some adult books. And I did the same with my son. And it's like I think that establishes this like idea of people reading to you. Mm-hmm. And then I think I agree. I think that's part of why I like audiobooks so much as well. But I'm also listening to 2 audiobooks at the same time, which is not like me at all. Usually I'm like one audiobook, but okay, so I'm listening to 2. One is Michael Palin's Journals of North Korea, which is just anytime anybody goes somewhere where you're not supposed to go, that's just sort of fascinating. But I'm also just started listening to Tank's poetry. Oh, yeah. Yes. And this audio, she reads it herself, and there's musical accompaniment in the back. So definitely the book is also amazing and has lots of little drawings in it. But if you want to hear her like perform it, the audiobook is definitely a performance of her.
I'm sure. I didn't actually know that was out on audio. I honestly wish that there was more poetry on audio. I don't know why there isn't a bigger market for that.
Well, I have a theory, but people need to get over it. So, here's my theory: is that they're short, and so like people will be like, oh, it's 1 hour and 50 minutes versus 8 hours and 50 minutes. Oh, I'll spend my money in the 8 hours and 50 minutes. But if you love poetry, this is what we need to get: is the people who love poetry to get it on audio. Because I think right now they exist, but they're just sort of being thrown out there to the general market. So again, if you're looking at somebody who's regularly going to buy a book like this, and they're like, oh, where do I spend my dollars? They're going to pick the longer one because they're not yet trying to appeal to people who already read poetry or enjoy poetry. And those are the people who would listen to the poetry. And the poetry that I've been listening to recently has become more of a performance versus just a read, which I think is what they were doing in the beginning too, is just like, okay, well, just read it. I'm like, okay, well, that's great, but you have the poet here. If you can get the poet themselves, let them sort of make it their own a little more than just sort of a flat read. And that's starting to happen with the poetry that I've been listening to recently and that have been coming out on audio more recently. And I think that's going to make a difference when we get that information out into the world. Everybody listen to poetry on audio.
What poetry have you listened to recently besides Tank's?
So I'm actually, I have my Libra FM account right here. So this is actually really good, but Dr. Montgomery, so he plays Billy on Stranger Things. And and so when I first saw that name, I was like, man, that looks familiar. Who is that? And I Googled them and I'm like, really? Like, what is this guy got? And that's not fair, but you do it. Like if you know them for something else, you're like, okay, what does this guy got to say? It's actually really good. It's really good.
Okay.
And Dear Girl by, I'm gonna mispronounce that, Aja Mayrock. I think it's Aja.
Okay.
And I really liked that as well. That just came out like a month or so ago too. Like those are the ones that I've read, like I've listened to pretty recently, and 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up, both of them. And on audio specifically.
Right.
Again, they're like, Tank is the only one with music behind her, but they are read by the author, so, and they let them read them the way they want to read them, I think,
Right.
versus just reading it. And it's really, you can tell the difference for sure.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna, right now, I looked on the website and you can't, we're still so far out, we can't pre-order the book, but I'm going to put a link to Alex's website, because this is where you should keep an eye on his website. And I'm sure he will be one of the first people to let you know when you can order his book.
Absolutely. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook.
Yes.
Magic Negro with a K, Magick. Yeah, it's not hard to find me, and I have a lot to say about what I'm working on and what I'm doing.
Yes, and I highly recommend following him on Instagram because you get lots of karate pictures.
True.
And
sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to plug is that
Yes.
starting on July 10th, I'm going to be teaching an in-person speculative fiction course for 6 weeks at the Noka Institute, and it's going to be a great old time.
That is awesome. Is that something people can sign up for? Is there a link?
Yeah,
is it something I can share?
It is something that people can sign up for. Let me get a link for you.
Yes,
right now.
Get me a link and put it over in the private chat, and I will put it in the public chat, and then everybody can do that, because that sounds fascinating. It's you said it's starting, so it's a summer course.
Yes, it's a summer course. It's for adults and it's in person. And here is the link.
And I'm going to grab it. So you can learn how to write from Alex. He'll tell you how.
Yeah. I mean, like I write a lot of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, but one thing that's always been important to me is to use those tropes to illuminate like life as it's lived in the real world.
Yeah.
So this class is aligned with that.
And that works. You know, that's something that you strive to do no matter what genre you're writing.
Right.
So, it's good. Well, we made it. We made it through our hour. I really appreciate you joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a great time. And thank you, Linda, for your questions.
Yes, thank you. And thank you everyone else who's watching. I can see how many people are watching. I see you there and not commenting. But we appreciate you watching. And yeah, we'll see you later. Bye, guys.
Okay.